What is up? Welcome to Every Single Guitars, where the goal of this channel is to review every single guitar ever made, Mr. Burns. Today I have a cool instrument. I don't even know if this is called a guitar. It's not quote unquote a traditional guitar, but I kind of do consider it as a guitar because it has strings, it has fret. You hold it kind of like a guitar and it kind of sounds like a guitar, but not really. But it's a pretty cool guitar that I have. I double cased it to trick you as if I was reviewing an acoustic guitar. But today I have a very old, very old vintage Gibson. This is a 1917 or 18. 19, I checked the serial number, it's either a 17 or 18. 1918 Gibson A Mandolin. It's actually called A, like Model A. By far the oldest, not just guitar, but I think this is the oldest instrument I've ever held, that I've ever purchased, ever. You know, let's think about it. What happened in 1918? That was that's 100 years ago, over 100 years ago, right? This was before the Great Depression, which was 1929, late 1929, before World War II. Yes, World War I? Was it before World War I? Dude, my history's kind of fucked up. Basically, this guitar is fucking old, okay? This is over a century-year old. A little backstory of how I acquired this instrument. I saw an ad online in Central Valley, California. The ad was it was a very uniquely written ad, as in terrible pictures, no, very vague description, but the description said Gibson Mandolin from 1900s. Anything Gibson, anything that old is pretty good in my opinion. So I contacted the man, drove out to his place, and for 10-15 minutes I could not find where this guy was living at. And I realized it was because this dude was living in the middle of nowhere. He was literally living in the countryside. You know, like on the I-5, Interstate 5, if you're from California, there's like two roads and you just go straight and then you just see a couple houses on the side, like farm-ish kind of houses. He was living in that kind of place next to a railroad track. Even though he had no neighbors, I could tell that this dude owned a pretty decent amount of land. This man was probably the toughest negotiator I've ever met face to face. He would not budge. But regardless, I managed to get this mandolin, this 1918 mandolin made by Gibson. So when I first got this mandolin, I've never owned a mandolin. I've never played a mandolin. I've only seen a mandolin, but I've never actually held it and played it. So I don't even know how to play this thing. But I could clearly tell that when I first got it, the action was super high. Just for any stringed instrument, it was just too high to the point where you knew it wasn't done properly. So I actually took it to a guitar store and I had a luthier set it up, and I literally just picked it up about 15 minutes ago. And even though I don't know how to play this thing, it sounds pretty good. So when I first got this or saw this in person, my biggest concern, or not really concern, but my biggest wonder was, he told me it was a Gibson, and it says the Gibson right here, but there was no name on the headstock. There was no Gibson brand on the headstock. So I was wondering if this was either fake, if, you know, the last owner scratched off the Gibson logo, which doesn't make any sense. Why would anyone do that, you know? Usually the people who scratch off logos, scratch off, you know, brands that are, you know, lower quality because they don't want to show that off. But for a brand name like Gibson, it just doesn't make sense for anyone to scratch it off, you know. But I did some more research on this online, and apparently the lesser models of the mandolin made back in the day by Gibson, they didn't have the Gibson logo on the headstock. For some of the higher mandolin models for Gibson, they do have the Gibson written on the headstock. So for this one, Since this is an A model, I think that's one of the lower ones for Gibson mandolins. I'm not too sure, like I said, because I don't know anything about the mandolin really. But that was the reason why there is no Gibson headstock logo. And I looked up some photos online and I did see a mandolin that looked exactly like this without the logo. So I'm pretty sure this is a authentic 1918 Gibson mandolin. Like I said, this is my first mandolin I've ever owned, and this is my first any instrument that's just of this age of 100 years old. But for a Gibson guitar or a Gibson instrument, or just from an instrument standpoint, like this is such good quality. You know, for 100 years old, like this was back in the day when there wasn't as advanced technology as today. But I don't know why, but I mean, this thing, apart from just like scratches, because it's over 100 years old, like, dude, this thing is fucking solid. I don't get the sense that this is a bad quality instrument at all. Even though I haven't played a mandolin, I have held and played, you know, smaller guitar body like this, like a ukulele or ukulele or lele or whatever, or like a mini guitar, and all of them just quality wise, it just seemed very flimsy, very not high quality. But this, the wood on this feels so fucking solid, and the fretboard is so solid, the neck feels solid. Everything about this mandolin is just such good quality. And a very interesting thing that I saw and noticed was inside the sound hole on the paper, it says guaranteed against faulty workmanship or material. Should this instrument with proper care and usage go wrong, we agree to repair it free of charge at our factory or replace it with another of same style or value. Gibson Mandolin Guitar Company, manufactured Kalamazoo, Michigan, USA. So I've actually never seen an Gibson instrument or any instrument that gives you a guarantee like this in the sound hole. Usually a guarantee, you see it on a receipt or something that's not attached to the guitar, but I've never seen any type of instrument that literally just straight up tells you, yo, if there's something wrong with this, assuming you took care of it properly, if it's not working properly, then we will give you a refund, or we will give you another instrument of the same model or value. Dude, that's a pretty good guarantee. That's a pretty ballsy move right there. That means if Gibson fucked up, dude, they would be losing a lot of money on this, but they were so confident on their craftsmanship and their quality that, you know, they basically gave you a guarantee on this mandolin, on this product when you bought it back in 1917 or 1918. Another cool thing about this mandolin, it says patent July 4th, 1911 on the side. And I think this is to hold the pickguard in place. But I guess they patented it 7 years before this model was even released, which is pretty interesting. I also thought that a mandolin was actually a nylon instrument. Like I said, I have no knowledge of mandolins, but when I got it, the strings were metal, just like an electric guitar. So I thought that, you know, they were like aftermarket strings. But when I asked the luthier, he's like, no, dude, a mandolin is actually a steel string instrument. And I was like, oh, really? I didn't know that. The way the strings are designed is kind of like a 12-string guitar, as in the strings are very close together, but there's 4 strings and the frets are really tiny. I have pretty big hands, so dude, this thing is just like so fucking small to me. Like literally my whole hand is the size of the fretboard. Like I said, I don't know how to play this thing, but I'll try my best to show you the sound. I don't even know if this is the right tuning, but this is how the luthier tuned it for me, so. Dude, you can't play it like a same guitar. It's not tuned properly, or it's not tuned the same way. Even though I don't know any chords of a mandolin, what I do notice is that Dude, the sound is really loud for the size of this body. I mean, this is like what, like 1/5 of a guitar body, but like the sound hole is so small, but the sound is pretty big. Damn, how do you play this thing, dude? I don't know any chords. Oh, The Godfather. Even though I couldn't do a proper tone review of this, for those mandolin players out there, what I can tell you for a fact is if you find a 1918, 1917, around that range, a Gibson Model A mandolin, you will expect the build quality to be very high. You will expect the sound to be very loud for the size of any type of mandolin instrument. And if you don't see a Gibson logo, that is how it's made for the Gibson A models, I believe. You should double check on that, however. But just from an instrument standpoint, this is very well crafted, very well done. I'm pretty surprised, actually. You know, I always thought, you know, vintage was, you know, I was like, who knows if vintage is really good or if vintage is better, you know, if older guitars or older instruments are better. But specifically for this instrument right here, 100 years old, this is way better than anything I've seen built this today in terms of an instrument of this body size. It's just very well made. I am very impressed. I'd give this build quality a 9 out of 10. Tone quality, I mean, I can't even give you an honest response because I don't even know how to play this damn thing. Vintage 1918 Gibson Mandolin.